My husband texted me, "I just inherited millions. Pack your things and get out of my house." When I came home, the divorce papers were already on the table. I calmly signed them. Good luck, but you forgot that. Good day, dear listeners. It's Clara again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I never imagined that 42 years of marriage could end with a text message. But there it was, glowing on my phone screen at 3 in the afternoon while I was folding laundry in our bedroom. "I just inherited millions. Pack your things and get out of my house." My hands froze mid-fold, holding one of Robert's shirts. The same shirts I'd been washing for over 4 decades. The same man who'd promised to love me in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer. Apparently, richer had different terms and conditions. Let me back up. My name is Margaret Chen, though everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 67 years old, and until that text message, I thought I knew exactly who I was. A retired school teacher, a grandmother of 3, and the wife of Robert Chen, a mid-level insurance manager who'd spent his entire career in the same company. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in suburban Sacramento. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. Or so I thought. The previous 6 months had been strange. I'll admit that now. Robert had become distant, distracted. He started going to the gym, something he'd never done in all our years together. New cologne appeared in the bathroom. He password protected his phone. Classic signs, probably, but I'd trusted him, trusted us. Then came the news about his Uncle Lawrence. I'd met Lawrence exactly twice in 42 years. He was Robert's father's brother, a wealthy, eccentric man who'd made his fortune in tech investments in the early 2000s and never married. When Robert got the call that Lawrence had died, he seemed excited, not sad, excited. "Uncle Lawrence left everything to me," he'd said that evening, pacing our living room. "Everything, Maggie. His entire estate. We're talking millions. Multiple millions." I remember feeling happy for us, for our future. Maybe we could finally take that trip to see the Grand Canyon. Maybe help our daughter Jessica with her mortgage. Maybe set up better college funds for the grandkids. But Robert's eyes had this cold gleam I'd never seen before. "This changes everything," he'd said. And the way he'd said everything, it made something in my stomach twist. The lawyers were handling the estate, he told me. It would take a few weeks to process. In those weeks, Robert transformed into someone I didn't recognize. He bought expensive suits, started talking about new beginnings and fresh starts. He'd come home late, smelling of perfume that wasn't mine. I wasn't stupid. I knew what was happening. But I suppose I was in denial, hoping I was wrong, hoping that the man I'd built a life with wouldn't throw it all away. Then came that text message, followed by another. "The divorce papers are on the kitchen table. Sign them. This is my inheritance, my money, my house. You contributed nothing." Contributed nothing. The words hit me like a physical blow. Nothing? I'd worked full-time as a teacher while putting him through business school. I'd raised our children while he built his career. I'd managed every household expense, every medical crisis, every family emergency. I'd been there through his father's death, his mother's dementia, his job losses and promotions. Nothing. My hands were shaking when I walked down to the kitchen. The divorce papers were indeed there, spread across the table where we'd eaten thousands of meals together. The ink was fresh. He'd already signed his name with a flourish. I heard his car pull into the driveway. The door opened. Robert walked in, but he wasn't alone. A woman followed him, young, maybe 35, wearing designer clothes and a smug smile that told me everything I needed to know. "Oh, good. You're still here," Robert said, his voice dripping with false politeness. "Maggie, this is Vanessa. Vanessa, this is, well, soon to be my ex-wife." Vanessa's smile widened. She actually had the audacity to wave at me. "Sign the papers, Maggie," Robert said, loosening his tie. "Let's make this easy. You can take your personal items. I'm feeling generous. I'll even give you $10,000 to help you get started somewhere else. But this house, this life, this money, it's mine now." I looked at him, really looked at him, and I smiled. Because Robert, in his greed and arrogance, had forgotten something. One crucial detail that was about to cost him everything. "Of course," I said calmly, picking up the pen. "I'll sign." His eyebrows raised in surprise. He'd expected tears, begging, drama. I signed my name on every line indicated. Neat, precise. The same signature I'd used to sign our marriage certificate 42 years ago. "I wish you the best of luck," I said, sliding the papers across the table. "But Robert, you forgot something important." He barely listened, already turning to Vanessa with a triumphant grin. I picked up my purse and walked toward the door. But before I left, I turned back one more time. "You forgot that this house? It's in my name, just mine. Has been for 23 years. The look on Robert's face as I walked out was almost worth 42 years of marriage. Almost. I drove to my daughter Jessica's house in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The late afternoon sun blazed through the windshield, but I felt cold. So cold. Jessica took one look at me standing on her doorstep and pulled me inside. "Mom, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." I told her everything. The inheritance, the text message, Vanessa, the divorce papers. Jessica's face went from concerned to furious in about 30 seconds. "That son of a—" She caught herself, glancing toward the living room where my grandson Tyler was playing video games. "Mom, you can't let him do this. You can't just roll over." "I'm not planning to," I said quietly. That night, lying in Jessica's guest room, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing, calculating, remembering. What did I actually have? What had I lost? What could I still protect? The house was mine. That much was true. 23 years ago, when Robert's mother had been diagnosed with dementia, we'd transferred the house solely into my name to protect it from potential nursing home claims against family assets. Robert had agreed to it readily back then. He'd probably forgotten all about it. But what else? Our bank accounts were joint. Our retirement funds were split. I had my teacher's pension, but it wasn't much. Robert's 401k was substantial, and I was entitled to half of it in California, a community property state. But the inheritance? That was going to be tricky. I pulled out my laptop and started researching. California family law, inheritance rules, property division. The blue light of the screen illuminated my face as I read page after page. Inheritances received during marriage are typically separate property, meaning Robert might actually have a legal right to keep it. Unless it had been commingled with marital assets. Unless he'd made certain mistakes in how he handled it. But I didn't even know the details yet. How much money were we talking about? Where was it? What accounts? Had Robert already moved it somewhere? My chest tightened with fear. What if I really did end up with nothing? I was 67 years old. I had some savings, my pension, and a house. But could I survive on that? What about health care? What about the future? No, I couldn't think like that. Fear was exactly what Robert wanted. Fear would make me accept whatever scraps he offered. I thought about Vanessa's smug face. about Robert's cold eyes, about that text message. You contributed nothing. Something hardened inside me. A determination I hadn't felt in years, maybe decades. Jessica found me at her kitchen table at 6 in the morning, surrounded by printed articles and handwritten notes. "Mom, have you slept at all?" "I need a lawyer, Jess, a good one, the best divorce attorney in Sacramento." She sat down across from me, sliding a cup of coffee into my hands. "Okay, I know someone. Rebecca Torres. She handled my friend Amanda's divorce last year. She's tough. Really tough." "Good." I sipped the coffee, feeling its warmth spread through me. "I need tough. What are you planning?" I looked at my daughter, this strong woman I'd raised. "Your father thinks he can throw me away like trash after 42 years. He thinks his inheritance makes him untouchable. He thinks I'm weak." "You're not weak, Mom. You've never been weak. He's about to find out exactly how not weak I am." I pulled out my phone and started making a list. First, I need to document everything, every asset, every account, every piece of property. Second, I need to secure what's mine, the house, my personal accounts. Third, I need to find out exactly what Uncle Lawrence left him and how Robert's handling it. Jessica reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "What can I do?" "Help me remember. You and your brother. I need you both to help me document our family history. Every contribution I made. Every sacrifice. Every time I supported Robert's career or education or business ventures. Everything." Over the next few days, I moved methodically. I opened a new bank account and transferred my share of our joint savings, exactly half. I changed my direct deposit for my pension. I gathered documents, tax returns, mortgage papers, insurance policies, photographs, emails. I found Rebecca Torres's office downtown, a sleek glass building that made me nervous. But when I met Rebecca, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with silver streaks in her black hair, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: hope. "Mrs. Chen," she said, after I'd told her everything, "your husband made several critical mistakes, and I'm going to make sure he pays for every single one." Rebecca Torres didn't waste time. Within 48 hours of our first meeting, she'd filed a response to Robert's divorce petition and sent him a detailed request for financial disclosure. Every account, every asset, every penny of Uncle Lawrence's inheritance. "He has 30 days to comply," Rebecca explained, sitting across from me in her office. "But I'm betting he won't be honest. Men like your husband never are when they think they're holding all the cards." "What happens if he lies?" Her smile was razor sharp. "Then we catch him. And judges don't like liars, Mrs. Chen. They especially don't like liars who try to hide assets during divorce proceedings." I'd also hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus Webb, a former police detective who specialized in marital cases. I'd never thought I'd be the kind of woman who hired a PI, but here I was, sitting in his modest office, looking at photographs of my husband and Vanessa. "They're not being subtle," Marcus said, sliding a folder across his desk. "Restaurants, hotels, shopping trips. He's spending money like water." The photos hurt more than I'd expected. Robert's arm around Vanessa's waist. Robert laughing at something she said. Robert looking at her the way he used to look at me decades ago. "Where's the money coming from?" I asked, forcing myself to focus. "That's the interesting part." Marcus pulled out bank statements. "He opened a new account 2 weeks after his uncle died. Private bank, not the one you shared. He's been funneling money into it." "From the inheritance?" "That's what we need to prove. But look at this." He pointed to a series of transactions. Large purchases, a new car, $60,000, jewelry. He bought Vanessa a diamond bracelet that cost 15 grand. My stomach churned. Can we use this? Absolutely. In California, anything he spends after the date of separation is considered waste of community assets if it's not for legitimate purposes. Taking his mistress on shopping sprees? That's textbook. Robert, meanwhile, was getting nervous. I could tell from the messages Jessica reported back to me. He'd called her, trying to sound casual, asking where I was staying, what I was planning. I told him you were with a friend, Jessica said, and that you'd hired a lawyer. How did he react? He laughed, said you couldn't afford a good lawyer and that you'd come crawling back when you realized you had no options. Jessica's face darkened. Mom, I wanted to reach through the phone and don't. Let him think he's winning. Arrogant people make mistakes. And Robert did make mistakes. Big ones. The first came 2 weeks later when Rebecca received his financial disclosure. It was incomplete, obviously so. He'd listed the house as his asset despite my name being on the deed. He'd undervalued his 401k and the inheritance from Uncle Lawrence. He'd declared it as separate property, not subject to division, and listed the amount as $2.3 million. Rebecca's eyebrows rose when she read it. $2.3 million. Interesting. That's a lot of money. It is. But here's what's interesting. He's claiming it's all separate property, but look at this. She showed me another document. He deposited the inheritance into that new account Marcus found. But then he transferred $500,000 into your joint account, the one you both had access to, before moving it back out 3 days later. What does that mean? It means he commingled the funds. The moment he mixed inherited money with marital assets, even temporarily, he made it community property, at least partially. I felt something unfurl in my chest. Not quite hope, not yet, but possibility. The real breakthrough came a week later. Marcus called me, excitement clear in his voice. Mrs. Chen, you need to come to my office. Now. When I arrived, he had his computer open to a social media page. Vanessa's Instagram account. Look at the posts from the last month. I scrolled through them. Photos of expensive dinners, a Cartier shopping bag, her wearing the diamond bracelet. And then, my breath caught. A photo of Vanessa and Robert taken in our living room. My living room. In my house. Posted 3 days ago. The caption read, New beginnings in our beautiful home, #blessed, living my best life. She's living in my house? My voice came out strangled. Since the day after you left, according to the metadata on these photos. Marcus scrolled further. And look at this one. It was a photo of Vanessa's hand, showing off an enormous engagement ring. The caption, He finally made me the happiest woman alive. Can't wait to start our forever. Posted yesterday. Robert had proposed to her, in my house, with money that might legally be partly mine, while we were still married. Rebecca's eyes gleamed when I showed her. Oh, this is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. How is this perfect? He's engaged to another woman. Mrs. Chen, Rebecca said calmly, your husband just handed us everything we need. Proof of adultery. Proof he's wasting community assets. Proof he moved his mistress into the marital home. And that ring? If it cost what I think it did, that's probably another $50,000 of community funds spent on his affair. She started typing on her computer. We're filing a motion, emergency relief. I'm going to ask the judge to remove both Robert and Vanessa from your home immediately and freeze all his accounts until we sort out what money is whose. My hands were shaking. Will it work? Look at me, Mrs. Chen. Rebecca's voice was firm. You've been patient. You've been methodical. You've gathered evidence. Now we strike hard. For the first time since that text message, I smiled. Really smiled. Robert was about to learn that I wasn't going anywhere, and neither was my house. The emergency hearing was scheduled for Thursday morning at 9 a.m. I wore my navy blue suit, the one I used to wear to parent-teacher conferences when I needed to project authority. Rebecca had coached me. Speak clearly, stay calm, answer only what's asked. Judge Patricia Morrison was a woman in her late 50s, with steel gray hair and an expression that suggested she'd heard every lie imaginable. She reviewed our motion, then Robert's hastily filed response, her face growing increasingly stern. Robert sat across the courtroom with his lawyer, a nervous young man who kept adjusting his tie. Robert himself looked confident, almost bored. He clearly thought this was a formality he'd win. "Mr. Chen," Judge Morrison said, her voice cutting through the courtroom, "you moved your fiancé into the marital home while divorce proceedings were pending?" Robert's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my client believed he had the right to occupy the home as the home is titled solely in Mrs. Chen's name. Is that correct?" A pause. "Yes, Your Honor, but—" "And you've been posting photos on social media from inside this home, Mr. Chen? You and your fiancé?" I watched Robert's confidence crack slightly. The hearing lasted an hour. Rebecca presented the Instagram posts, the bank records showing the commingled funds, the receipts for jewelry and cars purchased for Vanessa. She was surgical in her presentation, and I watched Judge Morrison's expression darken with each piece of evidence. When she made her ruling, her voice was ice. "Mr. Chen, you have 48 hours to remove yourself and Miss Vanessa Cooper from Mrs. Chen's home. All of your accounts containing funds that may have originated from the inheritance are hereby frozen pending full financial discovery. You are prohibited from making any purchases over $500 without court approval. Mrs. Chen is awarded temporary spousal support of $4,000 per month. Court will reconvene in 30 days for a full hearing on asset division." The gavel came down. Robert's face went purple. He started to stand, but his lawyer pulled him back down, whispering urgently. I walked out of that courtroom with Rebecca, my legs somehow steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "We won," I said, still not quite believing it. "We won round one," Rebecca corrected. "Now comes the hard part. He's going to retaliate." She was right. That evening, my phone exploded with messages. First from Robert. "You're going to regret this. I will destroy you. You'll get nothing." Then from numbers I didn't recognize. Texts calling me vile names, accusing me of being a gold digger, of stealing what was rightfully Robert's. Jessica called me, panicked. "Mom, Dad showed up at my work. He was screaming in the parking lot about how you manipulated the judge, how you're trying to steal his money." Security had to escort him out. My son David called next. "Mom, what the hell is going on? Dad called me saying you're trying to destroy him, that you've turned into someone he doesn't recognize. He's completely unhinged." I sat in Jessica's guest room, phone in hand, feeling the walls close in. This was the ugliness I'd been afraid of. The warfare. The poison. Then my doorbell rang. I heard voices downstairs, Jessica's voice loud and angry. "You need to leave. Now." I went to the stairs and looked down. Robert and Vanessa stood in Jessica's entryway. Robert's face was flushed, his eyes wild. Vanessa clung to his arm, her expression a mix of fear and fury. "Maggie!" Robert shouted when he saw me. "Get down here. We need to talk." "The court said you have 48 hours, I said quietly. "You need to leave my daughter's home." "Your daughter? Your daughter?" He laughed bitterly. "She's my daughter, too, and you've poisoned her against me. You've poisoned everyone." Vanessa spoke up, her voice shrill. "You're a bitter old woman who can't stand to see him happy." That money is his. His uncle left it to him, not you. That money was commingled with marital assets, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. The judge agreed. The judge was wrong. Robert started up the stairs, but Jessica stepped in front of him. Dad, stop! You need to leave! Or what? He looked at his daughter with such contempt it broke my heart. You'll call the cops on your own father? Yes, Jessica said simply. I will. Something in her tone got through to him. He stopped, breathing hard. This isn't over, Maggie, he said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. You think you've won? You haven't. I'll make sure you lose everything. The house, the money, your reputation. I'll tell everyone what a manipulative, vindictive... Dad. Jessica's voice cracked like a whip. Get out. Vanessa tugged at Robert's arm. Come on, baby. She's not worth it. Let her have her little victory. We both know how this ends. They left, but the threat lingered in the air like smoke. I stayed with Jessica for 3 more days, barely leaving the guest room. I felt exhausted, hollowed out. The confrontation had taken more out of me than I wanted to admit. But on the 4th day, I woke up feeling different, clearer, stronger. Robert had shown his hand. He was desperate, angry, scared, and desperate people made mistakes. I just had to be ready to catch them. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Maggie, it's Linda, Robert's sister. We'd always gotten along well, or so I thought. Linda, hi. Listen, I heard about what's happening with you and Robert. Her voice was carefully neutral. I was wondering if we could meet for coffee, just to talk. My instincts prickled, but I agreed. We met at a Starbucks near her office in downtown Sacramento. Linda looked tired, uncomfortable. She ordered us both lattes and sat down across from me, stirring her drink for a long moment before speaking. Robert asked me to talk to you, she admitted finally. He's a mess, Maggie. He's not sleeping. He's lost weight. This whole thing is destroying him. I said nothing, just waited. He wants to make you an offer, a settlement. You drop the court case, accept the divorce terms he originally proposed, and he'll give you $300,000. Cash. No strings attached. $300,000. A fortune to me just a few months ago. Enough to buy a small condo, live comfortably for years. And what does he get? I asked quietly. Linda looked down at her cup. He keeps the inheritance, the house. Well, you'd sign it over to him. He'd sell it and give you your share of the proceeds, which would be part of the $300,000. So, I'd get nothing from the house I've owned for 23 years. Maggie, the house is worth maybe $400,000. He's offering you almost that in cash, plus you'd avoid legal fees, avoid the stress of a trial. Linda. I kept my voice calm. Did Robert tell you that he moved his mistress into my home the day after I left? That he spent probably $100,000 on her in the past month? That he proposed to her while we're still married? She flinched. He said you'd twist things. He said you'd make him look like the villain. I'm not twisting anything. It's all documented. Photos, bank records, court testimony. Linda's hands wrapped tighter around her cup. He's still my brother, Maggie. I know, and I'm sorry you're in the middle of this. But the answer is no. $300,000, Maggie. That's more than you'd get fighting this out in court. The inheritance is his separate property. Any lawyer will tell you that. You might walk away with nothing. Then I'll walk away with nothing, I said simply. But I won't be bought off and I won't reward his cruelty. Linda left, looking defeated. I sat there for a while after, staring at my lukewarm latte, wondering if I was being stupid, stubborn. $300,000 was real money. But it wasn't about the money, not really. It was about Robert thinking he could discard me like trash and face no consequences. That evening, I went to my first support group meeting. Jessica had suggested it, a group for women going through divorce, meeting at a community center across town. I walked in feeling self-conscious, expecting judgment or pity. Instead, I found 8 other women, ranging from their 30s to their 70s, sitting in a circle with coffee and cookies. The facilitator, a woman named Dr. Sarah Kim, welcomed me warmly. "We're glad you're here, Maggie. There's no pressure to share, but if you want to, this is a safe space." I listened to the others first. Jen, whose husband had emptied their bank accounts and moved to Mexico. Patricia, whose ex had turned their children against her. Carol, who'd discovered her husband's second family in another state. When it was my turn, I told my story. The words came easier than I'd expected, and when I finished, no one looked at me with pity. "You're doing the right thing," Carol said firmly. She was 72, divorced for 3 years. Standing up for yourself. So many of us didn't. We just accepted whatever scraps they offered. "My ex tried the same thing," Jen added. "Offered me a settlement that was a fraction of what I was owed. I almost took it because I was scared. But my lawyer talked me out of it, and I'm so glad she did." Over the next few weeks, that group became my anchor. I met with them every Thursday evening. We shared strategies, recommended lawyers, warned each other about the emotional manipulation tactics our exes tried. Through them, I also found other support. Carol introduced me to her church group, and even though I wasn't particularly religious, they welcomed me. They helped me move my belongings out of storage and into a small rental apartment I'd found. A clean, bright 1-bedroom with a view of a park. David, my son, came to visit. He'd been distant since the separation, caught between loyalty to both parents, but he sat in my new living room and listened as I showed him everything. The bank records, the photos, the court documents. "Dad told me you were exaggerating," he said quietly, "that you were making him out to be worse than he is." "I've never lied to you, David." "I know, Mom. I know that now." He rubbed his face. I didn't want to believe Dad could do this." We hugged, and I felt another piece of my foundation solidify. Rebecca called with an update. Robert had moved out of the house but was filing motions to contest nearly everything. The legal battle would be long. "Are you sure you want to keep fighting?" she asked. "I have to tell you, he could drag this out for a year or more." "I'm sure," I said. And I meant it. Because I had something now that I hadn't had before. A community, support, people who believed in me. And I wasn't alone anymore. They came on a Saturday morning without warning. I was in my new apartment, watering the small herb garden I'd started on the windowsill, when the knock came. Loud, insistent. Through the peephole, I saw Robert, alone this time. He was holding flowers, grocery store carnations, the kind he used to bring home when he'd forgotten our anniversary. My hand hesitated on the doorknob. Every instinct screamed not to open it. But another part of me, the part that had loved this man for 42 years, wondered if maybe, just maybe, he'd come to his senses. I opened the door but left the chain lock engaged. "Maggie," his voice was soft, contrite. "Please, can we talk? Just 5 minutes. Say what you need to say from there. I can't do this through a crack in the door." His eyes looked red, tired. "Please, I've been doing a lot of thinking about us, about everything." Against my better judgment, I unhooked the chain. Robert stepped inside, and that's when I saw Vanessa emerging from the stairwell behind him, a small smile on her lips. My stomach dropped. "What is this?" I started to close the door, but Robert caught it. "Wait, just wait." He held up his hands. "Vanessa wanted to be here. She wanted to apologize, too. Vanessa walked in like she owned the place, her heels clicking on my laminate floor. She was wearing designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Mrs. Chen," she said, her voice syrupy, "I want you to know I feel terrible about all this, about the way things happened." I crossed my arms. "Get to the point, Robert." He set the flowers down on my small kitchen counter. "I've been talking with Vanessa, and we both agree. This war between us is pointless. It's costing everyone. The lawyers are bleeding us dry. The court battles are exhausting. And for what? You tell me. You're the one who demanded I leave." "I was angry," he said. "I'd just inherited this money, and I felt like it was finally my turn, you know? My turn to have something that was just mine." Vanessa moved closer to him, sliding her arm through his. "A united front. But we've realized," she continued, "that fighting isn't going to make anyone happy. So we want to propose something, a compromise." Here it came. I could feel the trap closing. Robert pulled out his phone, showing me a document. "We've drawn up a new settlement. You get the house. We'll sign it over to you, free and clear. You get $400,000 from the sale of my 401k, and we'll pay your legal fees to date." "That's generous," Vanessa added, as if I'd asked for her opinion. "And in exchange?" I asked. "You drop all claims to the inheritance. You accept that it's my separate property, which it legally is. And," Robert paused, "you agree not to contest the divorce or make any further allegations about asset waste or adultery. Basically, you want me to shut up and go away." "We want everyone to move forward," Vanessa said, her voice taking on an edge. "Robert and I are getting married, Mrs. Chen. We're starting a life together. This vindictiveness you're displaying, it's not attractive. It's not going to bring him back." Something cold settled in my chest. "I don't want him back." Vanessa's smile faltered. Robert shifted uncomfortably. "Then what do you want?" he demanded, frustration bleeding through the concerned husband act. "What is this about, Maggie? Revenge? Making me suffer because I fell in love with someone else?" "You didn't fall in love, Robert. You had an affair. While I was caring for your mother in her final months, you were sleeping with a woman young enough to be your daughter. That's not— And then you inherited money and decided I'd served my purpose. That's not love. That's opportunism." Vanessa's mask cracked entirely. "You know what your problem is? You're bitter. You're an old, bitter woman who can't stand that Robert finally found happiness. That money is his. The court is going to rule in his favor eventually, and you're going to end up with nothing but legal debt. We're trying to help you." "Help me?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "By offering me less than half of what I'm legally entitled to? By asking me to sign away my rights and pretend you didn't commit adultery?" Robert's face hardened. The mask was fully off now. "You're making a mistake, Maggie. This offer won't come again." "Good. I don't want it." "You stubborn." He caught himself, jaw clenching. Fine. We tried to be reasonable, but you want to play hardball. We'll play hardball." Vanessa stepped forward, her eyes cold. "You think you're going to win? Robert's uncle's will is airtight. That money is his inheritance, not community property. And every dollar you spend fighting this in court is a dollar you won't have when you lose. We have resources you can't imagine," Robert added. "I can keep this case going for years, bury you in legal fees, make your life a living hell. Is that what you want?" My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice level. "What I want is for both of you to leave my apartment. Now." "You're going to regret this," Vanessa hissed. "When you're living in some cheap studio, alone, broke, you'll regret not taking this deal. Out, now, or I call the police." Robert grabbed Vanessa's arm, pulling her toward the door. At the threshold, he turned back. I tried, Maggie. Remember that. I tried to make this easy for you. The door slammed behind them. I stood there, shaking. My legs felt weak. I made it to the couch and sat down, wrapping my arms around myself. They were right about one thing. This could go on for years. Robert did have resources, and I was burning through my savings paying Rebecca's fees. What if I did lose? What if the judge ruled the inheritance was entirely his, and I ended up with nothing but debt? Fear wrapped around my throat like a hand. But then I thought about Vanessa's face, her smug superiority, her assumption that I'd break. I thought about Robert's threats, his attempts to intimidate me, to make me feel small and powerless, and the fear transformed into something else, something harder, colder. They wanted me to be afraid. They needed me to be afraid, because fear would make me surrender. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I wasn't the woman who'd folded Robert's shirts and swallowed her pride and accepted whatever scraps of affection he threw her way. I pulled out my phone and called Rebecca. They came to my apartment, I said when she answered. Robert and Vanessa. They tried to pressure me into a settlement. Did you record it? I hadn't even thought of that. No. Next time, record it, but tell me everything they said. I did. Every word, every threat, every manipulation. When I finished, Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Then, they're scared, Maggie, really scared. People don't make threats like that unless they're desperate. So what do? We keep pushing, and we prepare for war. I looked around my small apartment, my humble, quiet refuge. I'm ready, I said, and I meant it. The final hearing was set for a Tuesday in late March. 6 months after Robert had sent me that text message demanding I leave. I'd barely slept the night before, but I wasn't nervous. I'd moved past nervousness into something else, a calm certainty that I'd done everything I could. The rest was up to the judge. Rebecca met me outside the courthouse, her briefcase heavy with documents. Ready? Ready? Judge Morrison's courtroom was packed. Robert sat with his lawyer. He'd upgraded to a more expensive attorney, a slick man named Gregory Hartman, who specialized in protecting wealthy clients' assets. Vanessa sat in the gallery behind Robert, wearing a demure dress and minimal jewelry, playing the part of the innocent victim. My children were there too. Jessica sat directly behind me, her hand resting supportively on my shoulder. David sat beside her, his jaw tight. They'd both agreed to testify if needed. All rise. Judge Morrison entered, her expression unreadable. We sat, and the hearing began. Rebecca went first. She methodically presented our case. The timeline of the inheritance, the proof of commingling when Robert had deposited money into our joint account, the bank statements showing massive expenditures on Vanessa, jewelry, a car, trips to Vegas, designer clothes. She presented the Instagram posts, Vanessa flaunting the diamond bracelet, the engagement ring, her new home, my home. She presented the purchase receipts, each one stamped with dates during our marriage, during separation, before the divorce was finalized. Your Honor, Rebecca said, Mr. Chen received an inheritance of $2.3 million. Within 6 weeks, he had spent or moved over $600,000 of that money. He claims it's his separate property, but he commingled it with marital funds. He spent community assets on his paramour, and he committed waste on a massive scale. Gregory Hartman stood. Your Honor, Mrs. Chen is simply bitter about the end of their marriage. The inheritance was clearly separate property under California law. Mr. Chen's uncle left the money to him, and him alone. What he chose to do with his own money is his business. It became community property the moment he deposited it into a joint account, Rebecca countered. And even if we accept that the base inheritance was separate, the expenditures on Ms. Cooper came from commingled funds. Mr. Chen also moved his mistress into the marital home, a home titled solely in Mrs. Chen's name, without permission. Judge Morrison looked at Robert. Mr. Chen, is it true you moved Miss Cooper into your wife's home without her consent? Robert stood. He'd been coached, I could tell. His voice was measured, apologetic. Your Honor, I was under the impression I had a right to the home. It had been our marital residence for over 20 years. I didn't realize the deed has been in your wife's name alone since 2003, Judge Morrison interrupted. Are you telling me you weren't aware of this? A pause. Too long. I had forgotten. You forgot who owned your house? Gregory jumped in. Your Honor, my client was under emotional distress following his uncle's death and the dissolution of his marriage. Let's talk about the timeline, Rebecca said. Mr. Chen's uncle died on October 15th. Mr. Chen sent the text message demanding his wife leave on October 29th, exactly 2 weeks later. He filed for divorce on November 2nd. He moved Miss Cooper into the home on November 5th. This wasn't grief, Your Honor. This was calculated. That's not true. Vanessa's voice rang out from the gallery. Everyone turned. Judge Morrison's eyes narrowed. Miss Cooper, you are not a party to these proceedings. You will remain silent, or you will be removed from my courtroom. Vanessa's face flushed red, but she sat down. Rebecca then called me to testify. I walked to the stand, was sworn in, and sat down. She asked me about our marriage, about my contributions, working full-time while Robert attended business school, managing the household finances, caring for his ailing mother. She asked about the property transfer in 2003, and I explained clearly why we'd done it. And when did you first learn about your husband's relationship with Ms. Cooper? Rebecca asked. The day he told me to leave. She walked into our home with him. Into my home. How did that make you feel? Gregory objected. Relevance? This speaks to the emotional abuse and manipulation Mrs. Chen endured, which is relevant to spousal support, Rebecca countered. I'll allow it, Judge Morrison said. I looked directly at Robert. It made me feel like 42 years of my life had been a lie, like I'd been nothing more than a convenience to him, and once he had money, I was disposable. Robert looked away. Gregory cross-examined me, trying to paint me as vindictive, as someone trying to steal Robert's inheritance out of spite. But I stayed calm. I answered every question honestly, without emotion. Mrs. Chen, isn't it true you're simply angry your husband found happiness with someone else? No, I said quietly. I'm angry he committed adultery, spent marital assets on his mistress, and tried to steal my home. Then came Robert's testimony. Gregory had him tell his side, how the marriage had been loveless for years, how he'd fallen for Vanessa, how the inheritance was rightfully his. But Rebecca's cross-examination was devastating. Mr. Chen, you testified the marriage was loveless, yet you took a vacation with your wife to Hawaii just 6 months before your uncle died, did you not? Well, yes, but... And you celebrated your 42nd anniversary with a dinner at her favorite restaurant in September, correct? That doesn't mean... And in your testimony, you stated you moved Ms. Cooper into the marital home because you needed emotional support during the divorce. But you'd already asked your wife to leave. You'd already filed for divorce. Isn't it true you moved Ms. Cooper in because you wanted to establish residency for her? Robert stumbled over his words. No, that's not... I was under stress. Mr. Chen, how much money did you spend on Miss Cooper between October and January? I don't recall the exact... Rebecca slid a document across. According to these bank records, which you provided during discovery, you spent $127,000. Is that correct? If that's what the records show... Yes or no, Mr. Chen? Yes. And did you ask your wife's permission before spending community assets on your mistress? His face went red. She's not my mistress, she's my fiancée, and the money was mine. The money was commingled community property, which you spent lavishly on another woman while your wife of 42 years was living in a rented apartment. Is that a fair characterization? Gregory objected, but the damage was done. Robert looked flustered, angry, caught. Vanessa was called to testify about her knowledge of Robert's financial situation. She was confident at first, describing their love story, how Robert had been unhappy for years. But under Rebecca's questioning, she fell apart. Ms. Cooper, when did Mr. Chen first tell you about his inheritance? I don't remember exactly. Was it before or after you began your relationship? We were already together when... So he told you after. How long after? Vanessa's eyes darted to Robert. Maybe a few weeks? Rebecca pulled out printouts of text messages. Marcus, our PI, had obtained them legally through a subpoena of Robert's phone records. These messages show you and Mr. Chen discussing his uncle's failing health in September, a month before the uncle died. You texted, "Once you get that money, we can finally be together." Do you remember sending that? Vanessa's face went white. That was taken out of context. Yes or no, Miss Cooper? Yes, but no further questions. The courtroom was silent. Judge Morrison looked between Robert and Vanessa, her expression somewhere between disgust and disappointment. We'll reconvene tomorrow at 9 a.m. for closing arguments and my ruling, she said. I walked out of the courthouse with Rebecca, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. We got them, Rebecca said quietly. We got them. I arrived at the courthouse early the next morning, feeling strangely peaceful. Jessica and David flanked me as we walked in. Rebecca was already there, reviewing her notes. Whatever happens, you should be proud, she said. Judge Morrison entered precisely at 9. The courtroom was packed. Word had gotten out about the case. I've reviewed all testimony and evidence, Judge Morrison began. I'm prepared to issue my ruling. My heart hammered, but I kept my face neutral. First, regarding separate versus community property. Mr. Chen received an inheritance of $2.3 million. Under California law, inheritances are generally separate property. However, Mr. Chen deposited these funds into a joint account held by both him and Mrs. Chen for 3 days before transferring them to a separate account. She looked at Robert over her reading glasses. The moment those funds touched a community account, they became commingled. Therefore, I find that the inheritance, in its entirety, is community property subject to equal division. Robert's face went pale. Gregory whispered urgently in his ear. Second, regarding asset waste. Mr. Chen spent $127,000 on his extramarital partner. This constitutes waste of community assets. Therefore, this amount will be deducted from his share and awarded to Mrs. Chen. Vanessa stood up in the gallery, furious. This is ridiculous! Ms. Cooper, sit down and be quiet, or I will hold you in contempt. Judge Morrison's voice was ice. Third, the property at 1847 Maple Drive is titled solely in Margaret Chen's name. It is her separate property. Mr. Chen has no claim to it. Relief flooded through me. The house was mine. Fourth, regarding division of other assets. The 401k will be divided equally. Each party receives $340,000. The remaining community inheritance, after deducting waste, will also be divided equally. Each party receives $1,086,500. I did the math quickly. The house, plus $340,000, plus $1,086,500, plus the $127,000 waste charge. Robert was looking at much less than he'd expected. Fifth, spousal support. I am awarding permanent spousal support of $3,000 per month until Mrs. Chen's death, remarriage, or further order of the court. Your Honor, Gregory started. I'm not finished. Sixth, attorney's fees. Given Mr. Chen's conduct, moving his paramour into Mrs. Chen's home without permission, wasting community assets, and failing to provide complete disclosure, I am ordering him to pay Mrs. Chen's attorney's fees in full." Rebecca's face remained professionally neutral, but I saw satisfaction in her eyes. Finally, I want to address something that became clear during testimony. "Mr. Chen, you treated your wife of 42 years with contempt and cruelty. You conducted an affair, flaunted your mistress, and attempted to deprive Mrs. Chen of her home and financial security. This court does not look kindly on such behavior." Robert's hands clenched on the table. "The divorce is granted. Mrs. Chen is awarded the marital residence, your share of all accounts, and spousal support as outlined. Mr. Chen, you have 30 days to arrange transfer of funds as ordered. This court is adjourned." The gavel came down. Jessica grabbed my hand. David put his arm around my shoulders. Rebecca leaned over, whispering, "Congratulations, Maggie. You won. Completely." I looked across the courtroom at Robert. He sat staring at the table, his face ashen. Gregory was packing up quickly. "And Vanessa." Vanessa looked at Robert with pure fury and walked out without a word. I watched her go, then gathered my things and walked out with my head high. Outside, in the spring sunshine, I took a deep breath. It was over. I'd won. Not just in court. I'd won my dignity, my self-respect, my future. And Robert? Robert had lost everything that mattered. 6 months later, I sat on my patio watching the Sacramento sunset, a glass of wine in hand. I'd repainted the house, filled it with plants and art. In December, I'd flown to Italy alone. 2 glorious weeks of pasta, wine, and freedom. I'd started painting again, joined a book club, volunteered at the library. My relationship with Jessica and David had deepened. I'd even started dating a retired professor. Through Linda, I learned how Robert and Vanessa's life had crumbled. Vanessa left him within weeks of the ruling, furious about the money he'd lost. She moved back with her parents, her Instagram silent. Robert lived alone in a small condo, having made poor investments that cost him 1/3 of his remaining inheritance. He'd left his job after the scandal damaged his reputation. Our children kept him at arm's length. "He asks about you," Linda said one day. "What do you tell him?" "That you're thriving." I was 68, divorced, and happier than I'd been in decades. Robert had his regrets. I had my future. And I was living it beautifully. Looking back, that text message didn't give me heartbreak. It gave me freedom. For too many years, I'd made myself smaller, quieter, more convenient. I'd accepted scraps and called it love. Robert thought money would buy happiness. Instead, it bought loneliness. Because happiness isn't about what you have, it's about who you are. I learned it's never too late to stand up for yourself. That dignity matters more than comfort. What would you have done? Would you have taken the easy settlement or fought for what you deserved? If my story resonated, please leave a comment. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Thank you for listening. Remember, you are never too old to choose yourself. Your worth isn't determined by someone else's ability to see it.